A node type represents real-world business objects that share a common purpose, such as departments, entities, or products. Node types define the properties for associated nodes. For example, the department's node type can include such properties as name, description, and business unit. You define property values at the node level. When you register an application, the system automatically creates default node types for the application. You can create your own node types when you want to use a different set of properties, define specific hierarchical relationships, or classify a unique set of nodes for a business purpose. In this tutorial, you create node types to define a specific hierarchical relationship. I've already registered a human capital management application with an entity dimension and imported data. If we examine the data in the default view, you can see that the entity node type contains companies and departments as entity nodes. I want to set up a hierarchical relationship in another viewpoint with company as the parent of department. To set up company as a parent of department, the first step is to create a company node type and a department node type. Navigate to the Node Types page and click Create. Select the dimension for the Human Capital Management application. In this example, there is only one, Entity. Provide a name and an optional description, and click Create. The Node Type Inspector opens. On the General tab, you can edit the name, description, and status. Optionally, you can add a prefix in the qualifier text box to make the node type name unique. You can also use alternate qualifiers to locate and compare nodes across viewpoints to address multiple naming schemes in the target. In addition to the default qualifier, you can configure up to 3 alternate qualifiers. The Properties tab displays the properties defined for the node type during the registration process. In this example, there are 2 properties, name and description. You can edit to select which properties are required and change the display order. Click Manage to add or remove properties from the node type. For example, you can add a set of custom or statistical properties such as levels on an as-needed basis. You can create node type converters to copy or transform properties from the source node types to the node type in focus. For example, when you want to map nodes across application dimensions, you would use a node type converter. Validations enable you to add custom business logic to enforce data rules on your node types. For example, you could add a custom validation to enforce a rule that all node names must begin with the same character as that node's parent. The Data Chain tab identifies where this object is defined in the data chain. Because this is a new node type, it is not yet defined in a data chain. Here's an example where the data chain is already defined. In this example, this node type is assigned to 1 hierarchy set, 1 node set, and 1 viewpoint. Use the Permissions tab to set up user and group permissions for the node type to ensure secure data access. Use the Policies tab to configure approval and notification policies for the node type. For example, you could set an approval policy to enable approvers to review and approve requests that add or delete nodes or that update node properties. When you are done making changes, close the Node Type Inspector. The node type is now displayed in the Node Types list. I did not show the steps, but I repeated the process to create a department node type. The next step is to define a hierarchy set with the company node type as the parent of the department node type. Select the entity dimension in the Human Capital Management application. Provide a name and description, and click Create. On the Definition tab, click Edit and then Manage to add the company, department, and entity node types. Note: the system automatically created the entity node type during application registration. Set company to any and department to none to define the parent-child relationship. Save the hierarchy set and close the inspector. the hierarchy set is added to the list. The next step is to define a node set for the hierarchy set. Note: in order to create an alternate hierarchy in a different viewpoint, you must create a new node set that uses the primary hierarchy's hierarchy set, and then use that node set when you create the new viewpoint. Select the entity dimension in the Human Capital Management application, provide a name and description, and click Create. Edit the node set, select the hierarchy set you defined earlier, click Save, and close the inspector. The node set is added to the list. The next step is to add a viewpoint to the default view. Navigate to Views and inspect the Human Capital Management view. Select the Viewpoints tab and click Create. Select the entity dimension in the Human Capital Management application, enter a name and description, and click Create. On the General tab, click Edit, select the entity node set you defined earlier, and click Save. The viewpoint is added to the view. Close the inspector. The last step is to create a request to build a company department hierarchy in the new viewpoint in the default view. Open the Human Capital Management view and create a request. Arrange the viewpoints in side-by-side layout. Create a top node using the entity node type and provide a name. Drag and drop nodes to create the hierarchy. Validate the request items. Submit the request. In this tutorial, you created node types to define a hierarchical relationship. To learn more, visit docs.oracle.com.